morning. It's November and it's been a few weeks since I've been out here. Some exciting updates. A couple weeks ago, my mom was here, and of course, every time mom visits, we tackle a big garden project because we are unable to sit still. So I will show you a little bit of what we did. This is one of the first sunny days we've had since it got cold, so of course, leaf blowing is happening. When we got our first frost, of course, in typical Minnesota fashion, it wasn't merely a frost, it was a freeze. So everything died pretty much. So my big priorities are really going to be to dig up my dahlias, and then I haven't emptied out any of my containers yet. So all of the annuals in containers have died. I also have a few dahlias in containers, and those are going to be my first priority to get those lifted, dried out, labeled, and get them ready to be stored. It has been a rough couple weeks for me. I've been really busy at work. I had to move my office, and when I started moving my office in late October, I did it over about like a week and a half, and there was a 70-degree day. It was humid, and then the temperature changed really drastically. It got cold. I haven't really been able to do a lot of the fall cleanup chores that I like to do. I had done an initial raking of the lawn and tried to cover a few things that obviously didn't work because it got so cold so suddenly. I'll show you a little bit of what Minnesota garden looks like after a freeze. Let's go. I'm prioritizing pulling the dahlias that I have in pots out first. We're going to start with the most crucial tasks and then see what I have time for after that. So we're going to empty out one of my dahlias in a pot. First, I will trim off all of the stems and put them in my compost pile. And then we'll tip it out and see what the tuber looks like in here. This is one that I bought just this year from Swan Island Dahlias. It would have come just as one tuber, so it'll be interesting to see how big it is once we pull it out of here. This is one that didn't do as well in a pot. It probably would have if I had put it in a different kind of pot. I have these plastic pots that look like terracotta, and the other dahlia that I have in a pot like this also did not do well, so I think it's this because they are smaller dahlias, so they should have been okay. But I also wasn't great about taking care of them. Let's see what's in here. So this is what it looks like once I have trimmed all the top off, and you can actually see some of the tubers coming through, like right there. Look. Ta-da! Let's turn it over and see what it looks like. I want to be really clear, this is not a how-to video. You can certainly try this. I have only been storing dahlias for 2 years. I think this will be my 3rd year trying to do this. So this is the way I do it, and this is not based on like decades of success. It's based on a couple years of success. So just know that I'm still experimenting, which is one of the things I like about gardening, is the experimenting. So these are all the dahlia tubers. So this all grew from the one tuber that I planted this spring, allegedly. So I accidentally broke one off, which is not what you want to do, but I will try to find the part that it almost looks like a heart. This is another tuber that is new to me this year. I just have one, and look at her. All right, I'm gonna leave this one for now and let it dry out a little bit. So I accidentally snapped one off because of course I did. So this is a tuber from Rip City, and it got a little bit of the crown, but the end snapped off, so that's not gonna store very well. So it's compost. This is also one that I wasn't super impressed with this year, so if the tubers don't make it, it's fine. It's one that's very widely available, and so if I want another one, it's gonna cost like $6 or $7. And there is my Rip City. There's a bunch of bugs in there. Hello, get out. I'll let it dry out. I will store it. We'll see how it goes. I actually have another Rip City over here. It was right about there, that I got just from Menards, again for like $7. And everything I have read about dahlias says they can't live in areas like this over winter because they don't like wet feet. It does also get down to -30 here sometimes. But again, I'm experimenting, so I'm gonna cut that one back and mulch it and just leave it, and maybe it'll come back in the spring, who knows. Okay, so I got all of the dahlias that were in pots. They are out now. I've got several drying on my little bistro table, which hopefully will work out well. It's got grates in it, I'll show you. But I realized that if I put them on my patio on the plastic mat, the plastic probably would have been fine, but this time of year that patio is in shadow basically until spring. So I don't think they would dry off as well, and they would definitely get cold. And what I don't want them to be for too long is both cold and wet, because that's what causes them to rot. So here is a valuable lesson I am learning about this specific dahlia that was in a pot. This was one of those papyrus reed grass type things that is an annual, and this one got huge, but I didn't realize that this grass kind of grows in a rhizome. Look at that. So it basically colonized the whole pot, and it's growing, if you can see right there, this is the grass and this is the tuber. So it basically started growing along the top of the tuber, which is good to know because now I won't plant this grass with anything else. I'll probably keep it in its own pot. I really liked how it looked. It was very dramatic, but it obviously shouldn't be in a pot with much else because it is very tough and it just grew like crazy. Look at that. So these are all sort of like little grass rhizomes. You can see I have everything cut back. Clearly a lot of these grew very hard and the pot restricted them, but this was a good learning experience for me, and that's what I always try to remember about any new gardening endeavor, is that it's trial and error, and even if something doesn't work the way I want it to, I'll still learn something. So that is always on my mind. So what we have here are Peach Fuzz, Gabrielle Marie, Cornell, Lollipop, Tapioca. This one I'm bummed about. It grew so well Last year and the year before, it was huge, but it was also in the ground. So that is good to know for next time. It bloomed really late and I didn't get very many blooms out of it, which was a bummer. This one is Rip City, and then Deborah Renee there. So those are all going to dry out for a little bit today while it's sunny. Note to self for next year that this is going to need a bigger cage because she got real big. I forgot we just had so much rain right before that cold, which was also not ideal. It's been a weird year for weather. This is a tuber that I saved last winter. So this will potentially be its second winter here. And we'll see how well it keeps. This is where the stems are coming up right here. I'm gonna actually dig about a foot out just because I have accidentally forked the tubers before. And hopefully I won't do that this time. My sweetie.
Coffee for wife.
Hearing something down there. I think it's gravel. When I first started gardening here, I had raised beds here, and I put landscape fabric or weed blocker fabric underneath them because I thought that would help kill the grass. Now I would probably not do that. I would definitely sheet mulch instead because I still get crabgrass coming through the old landscape fabric, and I'm still digging it up. Every time I dig something in here, I end up pulling a chunk of it out. So I'm gradually pulling it all out, but if that's your only option, that's fine. It's just not something I would do again. But check this out. Come on. This is great. So as you can see, this came up much easier than the ones in the pots. So lesson for me, I thought that the pots would make it easier to pull them up, and no surprise there, I was completely wrong. So I'm going to stick the label in here, get it on this table, and then we'll see what the cafe au lait look like. I'm now digging up the Marn, which was one of my favorites this year. And right before we had all the rain at the end of October, one of the stalks had broken a little bit and split. And I thought, oh, well, you know, these are all going to come out soon anyway. So I just left it. I didn't cut it off. And now I know why. You want to make sure these don't split. I mean, I knew you don't want them to split or snap off or anything like that, but this is a great example of exactly why. Right, you can see right here where it split, and then it rained, so all that rain got in there. So this is all rotted, and hopefully that didn't get down to the crown, but if it did, then the tubers would rot too, so you wouldn't want to keep those because they will just get squishy and gross and they won't be viable. I think these will probably be okay just because this only happened recently. It's not completely rotted, and this feels very firm. There's a lot of gravel here because this was all gravel pathway at the beginning of the year. And I decided I didn't want that anymore because I like to walk around barefoot. And I also expanded this garden bed, so when I did that, I kind of left a lot of the gravel. But I think that worked out really well for the dahlias because they really love drainage. And I amended it with lots of good soil and compost and manure and stuff. I'm seeing lots of worms. That's good. Ooh, okay. Look at that. That came up nicely. Okay, so some gravel is not bad. It's not all caked around here. Oh, it would help if I raise myself up. Next year, when I test out dividing some of these tubers, this would be a good one to try. I bet this is the original one. So all of that grew this year. That's awesome. I've been out here a few hours now. I was able to get all of the dahlias that were in pots are out, and they are there on the little bistro table, drying out just a bit before I put them in the basement for the winter. And I have emptied out almost all of my terracotta pots. I did get some cannas dug up. They're back here too. And I think my friend's gonna come over soon and we're gonna have a fire. So I'm gonna focus on getting some things tidied up before he gets here. Before I do that, I thought we would just take a little quick stroll so you can see what it looks like here in November. If you are in a climate that's very different from Minnesota, I would be curious to know what your garden looks like. Can you still grow things this time of year? What does that look like? Do you have a frost yet? I would love to know. Please tell me in the comments. Here's something that is looking beautiful right now is my black lace elderberry. This is the one that I had in a pot out front at the beginning of the season, and then I moved it back here. I love how this dark foliage looks with everything else as it's changing color. And here we have I think this is an English lavender. I'm really surprised this has now come back a few years now, and I actually have a couple more along the front of this bed here, but it still looks great. Let's see if it smells good. Ooh, yeah, it still smells fantastic. So that's wonderful. The smoke bush looks just gorgeous. This is really an all-season plant for me. I love, love, love this purple smoke bush. What are you doing? Something else that is great this time of year is this coneflower. This is a type of native coneflower, I believe. Look at all those seeds. But I usually leave it because these seed heads look really cool, and it's something that gives the garden a nice bit of height in the winter, and this will continue to feed birds, and then insects can hibernate in the stalks over the winter. So that will stay up, and then in spring, as soon as insects start coming out again, then that's when I'll cut this back. But stuff like this, I really try to leave up over winter. My serviceberry tree has not fully turned yet, but it looks great. It's getting some nice color right now. Meryl is doing some investigating, and so is Etta. I think she's hunting mice. Oh, and now she's hunting Meryl. She doesn't actually do anything to the chickens, she just likes to chase them. This is the other reason to stop now, because there's yet another neighbor out with a power tool, and now the train's going by. It's just so fucking noisy. But that's part of living in a neighborhood. Here is the red bud that I planted this year. It's already defoliated. I need to wrap the other couple trunks. And here's one of the butterfly bushes. So I'm going to cut this back and put it in a pot and see if I can keep it alive over the winter. This is a great time of year though for our spring plants, because these guys kind of wilt during the hot part of summer, but they really return in fall and they look really nice. Like, I love how this purple looks with the leaves in the background. That's so pretty. And also the roses, they had almost all the roses flowered again once the weather cooled down. And I'm not a rose expert, but typically with my shrub roses, I cut them back close to the ground and mulch them pretty intensely. I won't do that for my climbing roses. So this is a climbing rose, and it just like took off towards the end of summer. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research before I decide what to do with this. I think I will probably not cut it back, but I'll see what is recommended for this type. What do you do with your climbing roses? Do you cut them all the way back, or do you have them trained on something? What are you doing? I'm gonna keep working, and then at some point this afternoon I'm gonna have a fire and probably a beer, and then I will feel pretty good about sitting on my ass the rest of the weekend. I really love that part about gardening in the Midwest. I like that there are very obvious signals to slow down and insulate a little bit, and enjoy some time for rest, so that by the time spring comes, I'm going to be ready to go. Fortunately, there's still a little bit of sunlight and there's still a little bit of work to do. So I'm going to get back to it. Happy gardening!